My name is Jerome Daucher. I'm the GlassFish architect, and I'm going to talk today about some of the improvements we've made to HK2 in the 3.1 release of GlassFish. So HK2 is basically our macro kernel, and it provides a number of features for the GlassFish runtime. And the first feature that comes to mind, of course, is an isolation layer to the module management system. So basically, you can see the module management as OSGI, and we've got an isolation layer on top that allows us to be independent of the OSGI APIs. On top of that, GlassFish is basically architectured as a service-based architecture, around a service-based architecture. And that means that we needed a really strong framework for declaring services, consuming services, and that is something which is done in HK2 and basically done through annotations. Now, the way we consume those services can be explicitly through API lookups, but most of the time people rely on things like dependency injection, where they can use annotations like the @inject annotation to be able to inject services inside their code. So all of that is provided by HK2. On top, we've got also a configuration backend, which basically is an ability to load and save configuration files, usually XML files, and do that through very well-defined interfaces, similar to JAX-B, if you know that technology, and that will allow us to have these configuration objects being present in the service registry alongside the normal services. So basically, you can inject elements coming either from a real service or from the configuration directly inside your code. And of course, we've got an mbin facility so that these configuration objects can be automatically promoted to the mbin server. And this is really a number of features which are aimed to help developing server-side software. It's not something which is linked to Java EE or to GlassFish, and that's why it's not only open source, but it's a separate project which is available on hk2.java.net, and that can be used for any server-side development. All right, so what did we add in the new release of HK2, which is present in the 3.1 release of GlassFish? So one of the biggest items we had to do when developing this new version was to add support for the WebLogic product. So HK2 is being used since version 3.0 in GlassFish, but it's going to be used also in the next version of WebLogic. And that's to improve the ability for the two products to share code, and certainly a number of features that HK2 was offering was interesting to the WebLogic team in any case. Nevertheless, there were features that we thought were missing, and the first one was the ability to have a startup facility coded inside the HK2 product. And that startup facility is basically the ability to define startup services, prioritize them, and have HK2 take care of starting them in the right order with very specific steps that can be verified and achieved through annotations. So I'll get into details, but basically this is a startup facility so that you do not have to write startup code. You just write a certain category of services called startup services, and those will be called in the right order with the right priorities. On top of that, because we've had these services available since version 3.0, we've added facilities to be able to track services. So basically, it's a facility where you can get notified of changes of a particular service. You can also listen to service, and that's basically listening to the life cycle of that particular service, its allocation and its deallocation. And finally, to help with development and testing, we've added a JUnit integration. So let's look into all this in more detail. First, the RunLevel Services. As I said, we needed a facility to mainstream the startup services and startup sequence of an application server. And basically, this is all coming down to a number of actions that need to be applied in the right order. And by defining startup services, we've been able to define those actions, and by using dependency injection plus a priority, we've been capable of ensuring a very specific ordering of these actions without having to manually go through each of them through code, or having to have each action reference the next action and stuff like that. So each action is independent of each other, but because they have a particular run level or a particular priority, we are capable of ordering those and starting them in the right order. The next feature we've added to HK2 are the service listeners and trackers. This is the ability to register interest to a service creation and the allocation. It's pretty simple, and it's really great for cross-cutting concerns. So ability to know that particular service is being allocated without having the service to explicitly call you when that happens. And finally, the last thing we've added is a JUnit integration. So when you start talking about dependency injection and the ability to get your dependencies directly injected inside your fields or method calls, it becomes harder somehow to test, because obviously you don't have any kind of factory object you can go to request such objects anymore. So you can't do that through code, and it's more difficult to have access to your services and your dependencies if the unit testing facility is not providing you a dependency injection as well. So we've added this dependency injection facility to JUnit, and we do that through providing a special runner class. And you can see here a small example where you have a test which is injecting a particular service, and then it can use it within its method, this test method. So this feature makes it much easier and much more natural to test your code using injection, just like it would be in your living running system. So these are some of the features we've added in HK2. There is many more on top of obviously bug fixes and various improvements. If you are interested, please go to hk2.java.net and you will find more information on how you can use it or participate to the project. Thank you.